Diamond Out channel, welcome. Right, today is a re-upload of an old full instructional guide, and it's free on YouTube. It always has been. It's because it was from before I started the Patron page, but it was divided up into 3 videos. So what I've done is edited them together, and I'm filming this new intro for it, and I wanted to highlight it by re-uploading it because it's quite a good full instructional guide, and I like it mainly because I made a mistake. Well, I didn't make a mistake. I was having problems finishing this ring because I was doing the whole thing in just medium solder and doing all the soldering with this plumber's blowtorch. I was having trouble with it. Like, things were moving about and it was going wrong basically, so I had to stop and literally think of a new way to finish the ring. I'd come up with a new way of putting claws on the side of a collet. So I got out of trouble, and I like it because it's authentic. It's more of a real experience you will have when making jewellery, because don't make the mistake of thinking you just learn the foundation skills and then you can make stuff. Like, you'll run into problems and trouble while making things, and you've got to be a bit skillful, a bit clever to get out of trouble sometimes. Usually you've got to become a patron to see the full instructional guide. It's only because this is an old one, it's still free on YouTube. But yeah, if you want to become a patron, it's patron.com/diamondmounter. You get access to all the full instructional guides. There's a folder full of them now. If you want to become an official patron, you get exclusive content and ability to message me, and I'll help you out with what you're making as well. But talking to patrons, we got Alex Stevenson, Warren Jessup from a few days ago, and then yesterday and today we got Drew Rayner, who upgraded, and Liam. Thank you very much, Liam. Thank you everyone, all the patrons. They make contributions and make a real big difference to me being able to continue videos. And if you don't know, if you're first time on this channel, I was a professional jeweler in the UK for over 2 decades, so I was working on bespoke, high-end handmade pieces, so I learned a lot, and I don't believe what I learned is readily available online, so that was my motivation for starting this channel. So yeah, with patrons support I can do more and offer more, so yeah, cool. Right, let's get into it. So this is how the ring starts. I melted up 3 bits of metal, made the plate for making the settings. If I'm clever, I may get the underbezel out of that. I don't think I will. If not, it doesn't matter. A bit of metal for claws and a bit of metal for the shank. Okay, so the very first step, I'm gonna put my stone on there. I'll find something I can scratch around with this. This makes me feel a bit amateur doing this, but it's just what I do. Just give myself some very rough guides about the size of the stone. And basically I'm gonna cut a hole. That's where I'm expecting the outer edge to end up. So I'm just going to cut a hole in there and then try the stone on and get the stone sitting down in this piece of metal how I want it to sit in the ring. So the stone is going to be, that's going to be cut up basically, and then the stone lowered into it. And then once that's done, I just cut out around it the thickness I want. So the important things are, make sure you've got a bit of metal wide enough, like wider than the stone, because you're going to be filing around the outside and you want a bit of space to play. This is too much, but it's okay to use. And then I'll be doing the same technique for these stones as well. So luckily they fit on that way. So I want to show you every step. Cut that little rectangle out of there. Stone plonks in there. So checking the height, still too high, but I'm seeing the dimensions. It's possibly a touch too long for the width, so I'm looking at the gaps around the stone as it sits in there. So I know, looking at that and understanding what's going on, I know to widen it a little bit more before I start putting tapered edges on or anything. Took a square needle file, hitting it inside, pushing the sides out and just straightening the ends because they were too long. Not really concerned too much about with it looking nice and neat. I just want it to fit well. A little bit of movement there. Just push the width out a little bit more. Oh, this file. There's my new one. Even at this stage, it's nice to decide what's your top and what's your bottom. Where I scratch those lines around it, that's going to be my top. I just want to scale up the size of the hole, and then the stone will drop down a bit deeper, but not to go too far, because I want to put a bit of an angle. I want to put a bit of an angle on the edges, just so the stone is more comfortable, and then the stone's sitting on a flat surface rather than that pointed corner. Do you know what I mean? So putting that angle on it, and the stone, bottom of the stone is that angle, so it's going to be more comfortable on there. Give it a nice little comfortable seat. Right, before you go too far with that plate, have a look at the back of the stone and make sure you understand what the facets are doing. Like, it's not a straight line because the corners are cut off here, so that's not a point going all the way up to the corner. It's going to be flattened, but you don't know how far down the stone that flat goes. So I think my bezel is going to sit just where there's a bit of a flat there. So I need to take that into account. So mine is not going to end up with like dead sharp corners. There's going to be a bit of a flat on the corners, just so the stone sits in there nicely. Making progress, opened it right up, kneaned it up a little bit, checking the stone on there. My stone's sitting on these corners a little bit high, so I'm just going to take a little bit of meat out, not with a file, I'm just going to use my saw blade. So I'll thread that through, just take a little bit of meat out of the corners. Okay, I'm not too concerned about it being really neat and beautiful because no one's going to see this bit. It's just for the stone. 10 times loop. Alright, there you go. Yeah, it's dropped down. So I want my stone, because I'm using quite a thick plate, I wanted my stone dropped right down, so the point of the stone sticks out the bottom. Okay, that'll do. So now I'm gonna, what am I gonna do now? Put a line there. So the girdle or the stone, it's about 1 mil away from my hole. So yeah, I can just cut it back to there. And then this is where you have got to be neat. Yeah, measure it, put your stone on there and cut it back to where the stone is just on the edge of disappearing, because just still want to leave yourself a bit of metal there for filing and neating it up in the future. You still need something spare. Filing around it, stopping every now and again, just to check stone on there, seeing how much more work I've got to do. Filing around it and then stopping every now and again to put the stone on, push it flat, having a look around the side, see how much more I've got to take off. And I'm just going to keep going with that until I get it up to the girdle. Now I'm just being relatively careful to keep the shape nice. I want nice right angles, but just by eye, not really too concerned. It's still early stages and plenty of opportunity to get it perfect. So I'm approaching it, it's just the ends have got to bring in more than the outer sides, but really the best advice is just have the stone handy and be careful with it, but keep checking it. The stone is your guide. You're basically reading the stone. The stone's telling you what to do and how to progress, how much to file, what angle, thicknesses of metal, how deep, how big the hole is. The stone's telling me all of this. So I've been filing this up now to got it to a stage where I'm happy to leave it and then proceed with the other bits. Of course it's not finished, but I recommend you close one eye when you're looking at it and making sure things are level. So I've got it so the girdle, the edge of the metal is just on the edge of where the girdle sits, perhaps slightly over it on all four sides. Yeah, make sure it's not more one side than the other, not one end is sticking out. Try and get all four sides the same, work into the stone. And you should have, stones are usually cut similar to that. I mean the angle of the underbelly. So you should have a decent amount of thickness there. It shouldn't be like razor thin. The more straight the bottom of that stone is, the more thin the edge has got to be. It makes it awkward. But yeah, most stones are usually cut similar-ish to that. So you should have a decent kind of amount of metal around there, so it's nice and strong. You've got to consider the strength of the thing you're making. So now that's finished to a stage where I'm ready to move on. We can start on the side stones, and we're doing it exactly the same way. But the plate, I've got enough metal there. I'm just thinking about the design of it, looking at it from the side when it's finished. I just want it to be a touch thinner, this plate, from the centre stone. So I'm going to measure it when I find my digital calipers. I'm talking like 2/10, 3/10 at the most, just so it looks a little bit thinner for the smaller stones on the side. You don't have to do that, but that's just what I'm doing. And yes, I'm wearing a bandana because it's 36, 37 degrees outside, 3rd floor room, no aircon, just a fan. This bandana I put on as a joke when I was cutting the water bottles with my sharpened samurai sword, and really good, really effective for keeping sweat off your face. Works really well. So this is now something I wear when I'm making jewellery. Right, anyway, let's thin this off, and yeah, we'll thin this off and then do the 2 side stones. Yeah, perfect. Just took 2/10 off. I mean, the actual measurements are not important. I just want it to look a little bit thinner, about that much, and it does measure pretty much exactly 2/10. Maybe 0.25 would be alright, even a bit more, but you can just file it a little bit if you want a bit thinner. So it's the same story again. I'll put the stone on, I'll scratch around it or draw around it with a fine line marker pen, just so I've got a rough guide. Then drill it out, open up the hole nicely so the stone sits in at the height I want it to sit when it's set, and then that hole will be a guide for how much to cut away from the outside, and then keep trying to stone on it, get it just on the girdle, perhaps just under, no, just on the girdle, when you're looking directly down on it with one eye. So let's continue with the job, get it in a position. Again, this is just what I do, like, might not suit everyone, might seem a bit amateur bodge job, but it's always worked for me. I just like a rough guide of what the shape of the stone, and then I'll drill in the middle and then just make the stone fit in that. That's just how I proceed with this. Okay, nowhere near ready for putting that stone on, but try it and look, see what you got to do. Don't just guess anything. So, not necessarily that much longer, but a lot wider. Just making the rounded end more rounded. So just from trying a stone on, I know I haven't really got to increase the length, but maybe a touch. But just going out wider, coming out more. I know that because I just put the stone on there. So like I say, you keep checking with the stone, and then the stone tells you what you got to do. Thank you, stone. So I continued, opened it up a little bit, put that tapered edge on it, which allows me to get the stone to sit lower without keep opening up the hole bigger and bigger. I will neaten up the shape of it on the back, and then go around it, check it with a stone, file it back, cut it out and file it back to a point where, sort of on the edge of the girdle where you can just about see it. Doing the second one is going to be so much faster, because this one you kind of feeling your way and getting it just right for the stone, but the second one I can just look at it and go, okay, cut out a hole about that size and put that kind of tapered edge on it, and then boom, you know you're nearly there. So the second one's always much faster because you know exactly what you're trying to achieve. do a bit, check it on the stone, make sure you're picking up the same stone every time. Make sure it's flat in there, have a look directly down on it. I recommend with one eye closed. Oh my god, loads of work to do. Take the point off there, even amount all the way down the side. And this cut. So what I'm going to do now, this is finished up to the stage where I'm ready to move on. Taking away the edges, so it's just sitting around the edge of the girdle when the stone sits on there. I tried the other stone on, the other stone doesn't even really go in there properly. And there's the difference in the shape are the sides are a little bit more flat. So I'm happy to have two exactly the same as this one. And then the hole at the back needs adjusting to look nice in there. Right, so next step, just to fast forward the job a little bit. I'm gonna hold that where I want to cut it out, and I've got space. You can glue it on, but this is quicker. I'm just gonna hold it with parallel pliers, scratch around it. Don't push hard, just scratch. Rather than pushing hard and try gouging it, just do lots of gentle little lines. Then there's less risk of it moving. Oh, where's my other pair? Just to make sure it doesn't move. If you've got two pairs of parallels, I use them, but you don't need to really if you're careful. Scratch around it. I won't bother doing the inside hole. So there you go. I've got a kind of guide now where to cut out. And before you cut it out, it's a benefit having all this metal around it because you can hold on to it with pliers if you need to. Drill it out now and get the stone in there. Try and get it to land in that line if you can. Doesn't matter too much because you can cut it back, file it back after to get it the right shape. But yeah, while you've got metal around it, it gives you something to hold on to when you're working on it, when you're holding it and sawing and stuff. When you've got to make two bits of metal exactly the same, if it's on a flat plate, you can super glue them together, and then you're using the one you made perfectly, use that as like a template for the other one, and you cut the other one back gently to match your first one. I don't need to do it with these, they're so similar. The stones, there are differences, but I can make each collet exactly for each stone and they'll be so similar, it's not really worth doing. So I'm just going to file it up how I want to. But yeah, you can literally, come on, you can just, I'd probably glue the tops together. Could just glue them together, and then this one will be a template to make the second one. But I don't need to in this time, but it's something you may consider wanting to do in the future. Okay, next, when you got two done, the first stone I did has got the outer girdle was actually very similar shape and size, but the belly on it is much deeper, much bigger. So now I've cut these both out and they look very similar. I just put a black line with a marker pen inside the first one, just so I know that one's with a big belly, just in case they get mixed up. Also putting them side by side in their little collets, in their bezels. My first one I made is standing up a bit higher, so I'm going to lower it. So just making adjustments now, putting them side by side to make sure they're the same before I progress any further. So those side bezels are done. My attention is now back on this center stone, double checking the size. Yeah, perhaps a little bit long. One end from where it sits. It's all right, I'm taking the corners off now. I'll take the corners off and I'll paper it a little bit, and then we'll start figuring out our angles and stuff to put these on. Be careful when you put in a flat on the corners. It might be tempting just to think, oh, I'll just stick it on like that and zing it up. It doesn't always match the stone, like that angle. Sometimes there's a bit of a different angle than what you would expect. Check my loop. Wow, that was perfect angle. So it was what I expected. Just doing a bit more I've just got a flat section needle file. It was pointed, but I snapped the point off. I don't like points on needle files. Alright, again, proceeding carefully, make sure I'm not doing too much. I just want it just on the edge of the girdle. Okie dokie, that'll do. Okay, just to show you, I want to show you what I'm seeing when I put this on. So I've been around it, yeah. You can see the edges. This is just how it is as it's filed. So I'm checking the stone. Now this stone is cut really annoyingly. There's a... You can see how that top edge goes down and exposes my metal. I've tried to file it really straight, but because the stone goes down towards that corner, it kind of shows a bit of metal more than the other bits. So yeah, I'm looking, like I can see a little bit more metal there on there. That's where I'm trying to point, that bit. So I'm just looking for little bits sticking out of the edge of the stone. Sorry, it's a bit difficult to look at this through the camera lens. But that's what I'm doing, I'm putting the stone on and then sort of checking it, seeing what needs to be done. Now as for that tapering edge, I'm not adjusting my collet for that edge. I'm just gonna, I could adjust the whole thing all the way around, but I don't want to. So I'm just gonna leave it and see what happens in the future. But you will get this when you're making mounts for stones. Stones are very rarely mathematically perfect, so you're always kind of working with kind of illusions and stuff, so you need to make it to hide what's going on with a stone somehow. But I certainly don't want a collet that looks kind of down at one end. So I'm going to leave my collet as it is. I should probably try and show you close-ups of what I'm doing more often, just so you really definitely can understand what's going on. I'll just show you everything. This channel's not about, look at me, I can make jewellery. This channel's about you learning to do what I'm doing. So I always have that in mind. So I want to show clearly what's going on. I'm not the best jeweller, I don't claim to be, but I know enough to get people started making stuff. Try and look at it from the side. My chair's way too high. Because obviously stones can't touch. We don't want them miles apart either. I'm going to be filing a flat on this one and tucking it right up. I like the idea of it being sort of under the stone ever so slightly. So there's no chance of it looking like three stones plonked together. They look like a set. And the side ones are complementing and setting off the centre one. Put on flat on it, that's my top of my collet. Putting a flat on at that angle. So taking the bottom half away. Take your time doing this, don't go too steep straight away. Do a little bit, make sure you're filing it right dead in the middle. Right, when it comes to putting these on, I've filed the flat on there. See that? I've got the angle I want, so it sits kind of how I want it to sit at this angle. But where the stone, that's fitted for the stone sitting like vertically, but the pieces are not going together vertically, they're going to go like that, which kind of creates a gap between them. Do you know what I mean? Like they're not flat like that. They're not flat. This one sits like that, so it kind of makes, as they open up, it creates a gap in between the stones. So you have to file this one in a bit more than you might initially imagine. So I've got that angle on there now, and I'm just going to try and take it in, like with my file. I've got this angle, and I'm going to go in a little bit just to close up that gap. Alright, this is difficult holding it in the camera. They're not going together flat, they're going like this. So as they're like that, it opens up, so there's a gap between the two girdles now. So now I'm going to bring that one in, so shoving that stone up right up to that one. I thought I'd better show you this. Look, you've got to file away more than you imagine. Like, look at that, it looks like I filed it right away. What? You filed half of it away? Yes, I did. But bear in mind, that's going against another flat bit of metal, so that's, when that's soldered on, that's just solid metal there, past there. So let me show you. This is 10 times harder through looking for a camera. Come on, sort it out. Right, holding it flat. Holding it flat, holding the pieces horizontal. The girdle of that pear shape goes right over the edge. So that's no good, it's going to hit the other stone, but then when I tilt it back, it rocks right back. So it's out of the way again. So, to get... Oh, come on! To get the angle I wanted there, that's how much I have to file it away for the stones to be able to go next to each other. When it comes to putting these together, what I do is just have a sharp pair of tweezers. Obviously you want it, it's got to be filed correctly so it sits nice and straight, nice and straight, nice and vertical. So yeah, I can just pinch it with my tweezers and hold it in position, adjust it in my fingers. I'm using my saw blade a lot, making sure it's lining up nicely where I've got it positioned. And then I'll just literally hold it like that and I can solder it. I can plonk it in there, held in position, good for soldering, put toggle on, can turn it around as I'm heating it. That's how I would do this bit. Right, fortunately, this was quite quick and easy. I'm happy to solder it in this position. So I'm looking at it that way, and looking at it from the side. Just making sure it's all straight. Look at the spaces either side of that center collet. Making sure you like how equidistantatial they are. I just made that word up. Yeah, to make sure it's all flat and straight. Actually, I think I may have just moved it. It looks twisted now. So yeah, just take your time. Sometimes you can just go mad trying to line things up and get it held in the right position. It can take like half an hour just fiddling about and does your head in. This one's quite quick and easy. Although I think it's a bit flat. I might tilt it a bit more. No, I don't like it. Looking at, or is it just because it's twisted? Oh well, that's totally changed it now. So when you're lining these up, try and get it directly in the middle, obviously. Look at the spaces either side. Mine looks a bit more one side than the other. Make sure it's all nice and straight. Use your saw blade, line it up. Helps you, just anything you can think of to just check all around it. Make sure you like where it is. This stage is quite important to get correct, especially with the second one. It's all got to be in a nice straight line, because without that, you'll then making adjustments, like your shank will line up slightly off, so you'd have to file one side more than the other, and then you're just building a kind of twisted, weird ring. You want everything really straight and really perfect. Not only will it making it much easier, it will just finish off and look correct. Alrighty, so looking at it, the problem with doing these full instructional videos, yeah, like just sitting down normally making a piece of jewellery, you might proceed through it and you're like, oh, I don't like that too much, I'm just going to tweak that, do that. But unfortunately, I've made a video, I might have spent like half an hour showing you how I'm doing it and explaining how you should do the same. Then I get to a stage and I don't like it. This is like kind of that moment, because do you remember earlier on in the video I said like 0.2 mil to reduce the sides would be plenty and it will look thinner. But they don't really look thinner at all. So 0.2 was wrong. It wasn't enough. So I'm actually, my side stones do actually sit a bit higher than I want them to, and then the center stone compared to the center stone. So I'm actually going to lower the top of that a little bit, which will allow my stones to sit a little bit lower and then also thin off the look from the side. So that's what I'm doing. So correcting a mistake. But this is what it's like making jewellery. You kind of learn as you go along. Let me work on this one a bit more. That's a bit more like it. Maybe it was like 0.35, 0.3. I don't know, who cares? You just do it by what looks right. Flatten that down a bit now, if you can see, and also putting my stones on, it's butting up a little bit against the center one, so I'm pulling it out a little bit And remember, I kept saying before, I hadn't cleaned up the back holes yet, and it's precisely because of this experience in the past where you're making adjustments to things. They didn't quite go together how you wanted them to. So I've got room now. Like, I didn't take that under the edge of the stone, I took it to the edge, so I've got space to take off metal anywhere around it if I need to. Also, I can, because of that extra thickness, I can pull the stone about a little bit. I've got plenty of thickness there to cut metal away at this end and then make the stone come out a little bit without sacrificing any kind of strength. Right, I've got the stone sitting how I want it to at the right height and stuff. There it goes. But look how much work I've had to do on it. As I lowered it, I ended up sort of pulling it this way, because when I put the centre stone on, it was touching it a little bit. Was obviously no good, so I had to pull it this way. I had to do quite a lot of work. So I phrased it out, I had to touch that slightly, just to put a little roundedness just against that centre one, then cut away the metal there. Still plenty of thickness to work with. Also, we're going to be, another reason for not making it too small past the girdle was we're going to be filing around it more at the next stage. So still benefiting from having it slightly heavy for the stones. Did a bit of work, adjusted the stones, flattened those both sides, got the stones sitting, correct position, correct height. Now I'm going to tidy up the back holes a little bit, just with a file, just get them a nice shape that matches the outer edge, and then we're ready to move on. My advice is continuing on with this bit. Don't go too thin, don't go close to the edge, because we're still working on that. But I'm using the edge as a guide. It's not, to be honest, it's not too important. This is like really perfect because it's going to have like that bezel underneath it. But it's nice to make it nice, you know what I mean? Alright, let me get ball phrase just to quickly do that rounded end. Not a ball phrase. Bud phrase. Bud phrase is like the ones that are the shapes of a bud. I'm hardly doing anything, I'm just touching it to get it rounded. Get this angle like nice and basically you're just doing all the work underneath now because we're about to close it all up, so you won't be able to touch it again after. And if you're making a nice handmade piece, this is where you can win against CAD stuff and 3D printed, and cast, because they're all cast as like one piece, or the head is cast and then it's put on a shank. So you can't really clean it up and get it all nicely polished like you can on a handmade piece. That's where handmade pieces win against all that stuff. So if you're making something for nice expensive stones, yeah, you've got to do it handmade still. It's got to be quite special. Well, you know, like I was inspired by the Bobby White video. Have a look at his video and you can see at the end, it's all really beautifully polished inside. It's because he handmade it so he could polish it before it was all going together. Just looking at this and thinking about how to proceed. Really, this kind of head should be completed and then put in a shank, because I hadn't really thought ahead going through the ring exactly how I'm going to do it. You should have V-claw really on there, which I do have another upload explaining in depth how to make a V-claw, but this stone is sort of just a size where a V-claw would just be unnecessarily chunky on the end of it. I think it's small enough to get away with a just slightly larger than usual diameter round wire claw that's going to allow you to safely have that set. I don't think it needs a V-claw. V-claw is going to be too much in that. Also, V-claw means I'm going to have to, yeah, you'd have to complete the head, like with all the claws on, the underbezels, the V-claw on the end, and then you have this kind of unit that you put into a shank. I don't want to make the ring like that. With the round claw, yeah, I'm going to go for a slightly fatter round claw so you can set that securely, and then that allows me to continue with this ring the way I was initially wanting to do it. So I'm just waffling on, but yeah, next stage we're gonna make a shank. We're gonna make a shank. This won't be going in that shank just now, but we need to make the shank to get it right. So I'm just waffling on, but yeah, next stage we're gonna make a shank. We're gonna make a shank. This won't be going in that shank just now, but we need to make the shank to get it right. Milling out a piece of metal, go steady. You don't want to lose too much height on the ends. I might squeeze it down one way just to get a bit more height, and then I'm going to do what I did in another video. Can't remember what I was making, but I thinned out a middle section. There's a mistake I always make. I always mill out too much distance, so the ring size always gets massive. So I'm just going to try and mill that much, like keep it that far from the end, just mill out about that much, and then the whole shank should be about that long with a thinner bit in the center. But first I'm going to squeeze it one way so I get the height, and then I'm going to start working in that little middle section. I'm trying my best not to make a mistake and go too far. Wish me luck. I'm not going to make that mistake. Don't roll it too far. Just squeeze it a little bit. Don't go too far. Oh, it's creeping length a little bit. No more. Don't go too far. I'm not making that mistake again. Don't go too far. Okay. There we go. Kind of close to the end. I'm just going to make it a bit longer. There we go. Howdy. It was square, squeezed it this way, so I got a bit more height there. Then I've squashed it down in the middle, just that section. Probably could have gone a bit wider, but I'm scared of going too far again. So I've got a nice bit of metal there, which will turn up nicely to my shank. Right, what I might do with this shank, I'm tempted to, it's really short, but I'm tempted to turn it up into a circle, so it will look like a really small ring. But that way I can bang it against the ring stick with my hammer, get it perfectly round, the inside circumference perfectly round, and then also I can shape it up really symmetrically and really perfectly. And then I'll just cut it through the solder joint again and open it up to the size I need to fit that head. So I'm gonna do that. Okay, it's gone really hard straight away. Problem with melt ups, everything goes really hard really quick. Right, anyway, I'll anneal that and then continue, do what I said. Turn up into a circle, get it nice and flat, get it perfectly round, and then file it up, cut it through the solder joint, open it up. Bob's your mother's brother. It's not always possible to use this, but sometimes if you've really got to force something around, using your ring compressor can be a bit of a cheaty kind of hacky way to get things around. So that's all right now. I'll cut it through a little bit, get a bit of a flat so that solders up strongly, and then I'll put it on the ring stick and start bashing it about and filing it. Filed it up. Just tapping the shank up to a tapered point a little bit, gives me an extra bit of height. Also, a bit of a design flair. me show you close up. Let me show you a close up. Yeah, just basically filed up a shank. And I know it looks tiny. Don't forget, I'm about to cut that open and open it right up. So this can go in there. I'm going to cut straight through my solder joint, but I'm going to chop it back a little bit because that inner joint, either side of the joint is a bit horrible. But now I'm just going to cut through the joint and then make any adjustments I need to after. If you ever find yourself having to rejoin a shank and there's no head in there, I find just laying it down on a flat block, if you've got something that's nice and flat, helps you. Then all you really got to think about is filing it nicely so that it closes up well. But it's not going to be a perfect join, but try as best possible to get it straight. You don't want a shank like this and then you're working on it and then you've got to cut through it and straighten it up because it can make things look a bit twisted. So just try and get it really straight. So I try and solder it perfectly and then I will tap it as well to make sure it's all lined up really well as best you can. Your shank, make sure it's straight, make sure your angles are nice and symmetrical and they're with your head, put it on, make sure you like them. I might straighten mine a little bit. But yeah, make sure everything's working correctly, it's all nicely lined up. Next you're going to need, we're doing the underbezel, so we're joining that up, the bottom half. So we're not putting that head in, we needed it for the distance, but now we're putting a piece in. So basically you just need a plate. I recommend going the same or thinner than your thinnest parts on your head, and it's just got to be bigger basically. It doesn't really matter what shape, as long as you've got spare over the edge of your head, and then we'll cut it back when it's in there. So cut it to a sort of sensible-ish size, and then without making sure this is dead straight, without changing its curvature or its angles, get a piece in. Just annealed this bit of plate, a little bit hot. Obviously the curve of that has got to match the curve of that, so double check your size. I've got K1/2. I'm now going to bend that so it draws a perfect circle around that inner edge, and I will be basically just putting it in that, tapping it around. I use these things. Cut it to a more sensible size, or where it's going to need the minimum amount of adjusting. So I'm just going to snap mine off there. It's going to curve, so you're going to lose some length. So make sure you cut it with extra length. With your swage block, don't choose something that fills in the gap entirely, because that has some depth to it. So there's no space for that. You'll just be kind of hitting it down, not right to the bottom. So you need one with a bit of space. Obviously, don't go straight to your smallest one and put something on top and hit it down, because that sharp edge will damage it. Like things like that, I don't know why. I mean, the amount of people that got rich off the jewellery trade, but no one ever gives nothing back to the trade. Like me, I'm constantly making notes about how I can improve tools. So one day I would like to bring out my own range of tools, and things like a swage block, there'll be a lot more choice. Like there's two severe differences in these. And then also I won't have sharp corners. Just round it off just gently, and it'll save so many people damaging their pieces accidentally. That sharp corner, just there's no need for it. Anyway, so get one where it fits in. You can even start it off with pliers, I guess would be sensible. So it's got a bit of a roundedness and drops in there more, and then tap it in. I've got it's in the other room. I don't like banging my hammer against steel things because you damage it. I recently had to buff it back, so I had loads of marks in there. I've got like a heavy ended nylon hammer, like very hard plastic hammer, and it's got a lot of weight to it. So for hitting these sort of things down, I like using that. You might have a rawhide mallet. Rawhide mallets are rubbish, throw it in the bin. But ideally you need something that isn't metal when you're banging metal against other steel tools. Gave it a tweak with the pliers, so that drops in there now, no problem. And then my hammer, it's heavy because it's got this kind of metal brace around the outside, but the weight really helps it a lot. And make sure your piece in there straight. If you've got something in there a bit diagonal and then you tap it, it's going to be twisted. It's no good. Make sure it's in there straight. Let's see what size I got. Oh, that's not pretty good. That's about right. That's good. I wasn't expecting that. So yeah, obviously start with a bigger one, work your way down if you need to. And holding it directly in front of you with your curve going that way, make sure your end is really straight, and then you're going to have to get the angle on it correct to sit really well against one side. And then once you've done that, then try to hold it on its side and then mark it with something and then cut it out. But that needs to, this can't be changed at all, this shank. That has to stay that circular, you can't move it about at all. So we're just adjusting this piece to make it fit. And ideally, it just drops. You filed it, all the correct angles on the ends, curvature is nice, and it should just drop down and sit level. So what I've done, K&1/2, I filed one end to get that to sit nicely. So what I do is I hold that so it's touching one end, and I'll just mark it so I know where to cut. And I'll always cut it, giving myself a bit of work to do with the file to get it back perfectly, because you might saw it and make an accident with the angle or something. You don't want to waste this bit of metal and start again. So mark it where it needs to be, but then I always cut it slightly longer, and it gives me a bit of maneuverability, room to maneuver to get it fit in perfect. Without the shank moving, that should just sit there and line up nicey. It should solder in well and not affect that at all. Technically, I can just balance that in there. There you go. It just sits there quite sturdy because the ends are matching angles, and obviously it's a bit of a flat, so it's quite sturdy in there. I'll just hold that in tweezers in my trusty old peg slot, solder it in. So as you can see, put that piece in. I've been papering it, just paper disc over it, making sure it's flat. Filed around the inside, buzzed it out just to make sure everything's all lined up nicely and everything's all nice and straight, nothing twist. I'm gonna work on the shank a little bit, just get that nice and flat. Just kind of take it up to the next level before we put this on. Won't bother with this one, but if you're doing a ring for a customer, you'll get the shank perfect. So what I do is I mark directly at the bottom, like 90 degrees, 270 degrees, and in between, and then with my digital calipers, ideally the sort of bottom half, maybe slightly less than the bottom half, is all the same, and then it starts going up more. But because this head is so wide, might reduce the amount that's the same and just have the tapered section coming down a bit further down the side. But yeah, basically that, obviously that's got a mirror, that a little bit different. That side 182, 194, so I know to take more weight off one side. So it's not immediately obvious looking at it. So to get measurements the same, I would put a very slight flat on there. And then after your measurements are quite good, you can sort of round it off, but don't touch that middle section. And then obviously by eye, all you can do really is just match. If there's a flat on the side, make sure that looks nice and symmetrical, nice and even all the way around. If you're doing one for a customer and you're finishing it off properly, get this all polished out, get that all perfect, papered and polished on underneath before they go together. And then it's going to really make the difference between your handmade high quality piece and a crappy CAD design 3D printed job. Right, so mine, the points of those are going just on top of the shank, which is when I was talking about doing the V-claw would have been set into the shank, but I want to partly make it a bit easier for myself and easier also for someone doing it for the first time. We're just going to have a kind of slightly chunky round claw, which will be set into the top of the shank. So it's much easier to do, and it just changed the way I made it slightly. Rather than having it set in between the ends, it's going to go kind of on top, which it looks alright, it kind of suits it. So yeah, if you're doing one in proper precious metal, get it all polished out before you start joining bits together. A measurement that's really important for it to finish off looking nice is the height of the ends of your shank. So I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but it doesn't matter. It's now when it's really important. What we got? Right. That says 2.87. 2.93, 92. Yeah, a little bit higher this side, so not a lot at all. Just do it with a buff stick. So yeah, tweak it and make sure they're as accurate as possibly can get, because that makes a big difference. If one side's tilting up more than the other, it's gonna really show up, because once you put claws on the side, the gaps really are really highlighted in between the claws, and if one side's taller than the other, it just looks like you didn't make it very well. Basically, you nearly made it well, but you didn't quite. So important things to get it finishing looking really good from its side profile is that angle is perfectly matched to that angle, and yeah, the heights it sits at. So both of these got to be exactly the same. Both of those angles got to be the same. Claws have to be all perfectly symmetrical as well. Actually, it's getting quite tricky, isn't it? I forgot about. I'm not thinking ahead with this job. But yeah, once the claws go on, it's going to really highlight any inaccuracies you've done. So, like I always say, just work accurately, take your time, get everything straight, everything symmetrical, all your angles and stuff. It's all just being a jeweler, really, isn't it? Learning all that. Right, this stage. In silver, it causes problems. Like if this was platinum, yeah, or even gold, I would have soldered that in hard gold, hard solder, and I just like hold it in that position and then solder it, it'll be fine. But if I had that clamped even gently, if I heat that up, silver just turns to butter, it'll just squash it all out of shape. So I'm gonna have to get a bit of wire or something and just put it in the middle so that sits on it. So it just balances at the right height, it's kind of supported, nice and straight, and then I'll carefully touch a bit of solder on the ends. That's the only way I can do that. If you're working in gold and stuff, I would. I mean, you could do it the same, but I would just clamp it in the middle. So I'm making a new handle for this knife. I need a thick bit of metal, which I don't have, so I was cutting up like a sheet of copper. So I'm building a little hand guard there. Because I'm cutting that up, I had these little offcuts of copper. And yeah, check this out. This little bit, I just flattened the sides, took the burrs off, and it just sits perfectly. So I'm just going to leave that in position. I'll flux it both ends, and that almost acts like a bit of glue to hold it in position, and then I'll just gently touch a little bit of solder on there. Hopefully it doesn't all fall apart when I try and heat it up. Alright, take your time when you're putting this in position. It's got to be lined up like left and right, really perfect. So I'm looking at it from the side, making sure it's over the same amount, opposite sides. Needs to go back a little bit more this way. Oh, just a tiny little touch. Yeah, there you go. I like that. But then that's no good if it's like forwards and backwards wrong. Which it is. This is when my watchmaker's eyeglass comes in handy. Do you remember if you saw my video, I think it was on a Golden Nuggets video, like 10 times loop, it's so close. It's nice to be able to magnify it, but in focus, slightly back, so you can see the whole thing. It's got to go that way, without moving left or right. Alrighty. No, a bit more. What I'm doing is I support like one hand against the other hand and one hand against my peg, just so there's no trembles of my hand. Oh, come on. Do you know what? I think the whole thing's tilting this way, it's ballsing me up a little bit. That's better. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm sure that moved. Ah, it did. Alright, that's good. I think it went up that way. That's alright, you know. It's got to go this way a little bit. Man, I'm like manoeuvring it like tenths of a mil. I think I've got it. Problem is I've got to get flux on that now without it moving. And then add solder without it moving. And then solder it without it moving. What I'll do is get one side, get them both lined up really perfect, but then get solder on one side. And then let it cool down, look over it. You can tweak it a little bit if you need to. But basically take your time. This side's really good. This side's nearly really good. So I'm gonna solder this side up, and then I think I'm gonna have to pull it across a little bit. Did that. It flooded. Oh yeah, I got it. Just double check it's in the correct position. Not bad. That's really delicately on there. Ah, man, I'm good. Look at that before I touch it. You can see the point, just that little solder there. Very delicate little one. I soldered it on. This is fresh out of acid, so it's just exactly how I've soldered it. Just looking over it, make sure it's all straight, make sure my points go right down the center and it's all in a nice straight line. Look from the side, check your gaps. Next, we've got to cut around that, and then we're filing them up together, like very, very perfectly. And my one, I think, it's only just touching the tops of those Shank's shoulders. Look, mine's not going to be strong enough, so I might put a bit of metal through there and just touch it on with a tiny bit of solder just to hold it nice and solid as I cut and file around it. Things like that, jewelers on other channels definitely won't show you because it doesn't make you look good. But I think it's important to show you these kind of things. This is how I work, how I progress. I can do this because I don't sit here calling myself a master or claiming to be the best at any time. I just get jobs done. So yeah, what I'm going to do to proceed, just to make sure this doesn't bend out of position when I'm working on it, cutting and filing around the top, I'm just going to get a bit of metal that fits in there nicely and solder it top and bottom, both sides, and then get it all cut up and filed back, and then we can just chop it out. It should be relatively easy to do. Right, I have this bit of round wire. I just milled it to put a flat on it because it wasn't quite touching it. So now with that extra little bit of width, it stands up in there, like just stands up in there. Actually, I might mill it a bit more. That's all right, I'll solder it in, just in the middle. Another design, another day. There could even be a bit of a design feature having a pip in the middle, but I don't want it on this ring. So yeah, I'll just solder that in the middle. And now what we're doing, we are cutting around it. Basically, I'll cut it reasonably close and then do the rest of the work with a file. We're going to file it not vertically, it's going to be under a little bit, so you have to pay attention to that angle because you've got to try and keep that angle the same. You go around this corner, so the angle's got to be kind of the same, and then same with these, that angle following that curvature. And then also the trick is to file up to that, but not take any distance away from it, maybe just the tiniest amount. This just goes back to what I've been saying the whole time about not taking too much metal away past the girdles. I just went up to the girdles, the stone, that bezel is just hidden behind the edge of the stone when you look directly down on it. So there's a tiny bit of spare metal now, so we can file up to it without trying to take any metal away, and then technically we should have a little bit spare distance for like papering and polishing after. I would recommend don't try to be too clever and to cut that angle on it. Do it with your file, it'll be so much more accurate, much safer. Going into these bits, I've cut around it basically, yeah, but now next got to cut a little bit out of there. What I do is I sort of line up with a corner and I cut directly into it, so not too close to there, not too close to there, just sort of down the middle up to that point. I don't saw right up to it as well, I let my file do the work. You can do much more careful, accurate work with your needle files than you can sawing into it. Bear in mind how you're pushing it against your peg as well. You could push that out of shape quite easily, so you might have to hold it a bit awkward. And don't let your saw hit the bottom of your shank either. It's all getting a bit awkward to work on. Okay, that'll do. Do about that much, all four, then I'll start. I can't even bother to cut a piece out. I may cut across there, but I can open that up very quickly and easily with a tri-square file. Take these corners off now, and then I'm approaching it being ready for putting claws on. My claws are going to have the round one, like I said I'm going to do there. I'm going to have two little ones sticking up there. They're not going to go right down to the bottom, they're probably just going to go from there up, and then 4 claws on the corners for the center stone. Sorry, I'm being a dumbass. Not putting the claws on next, I'm going to cut out the back. So, you know, that back plate is still solid, so drilling out the middle, either side, cut some shapes out, get that kind of nice. If you do that, you might want to, you can use dividers to go around the edges. Use a marker pen, just to give you a guide. We can sketch out some designs. Basically, my side ones are going to be quite small. Yeah, but basically just scaled down version of what that top looks like. So do that next, then put the claws on, simply because when the claws are on, they get in the way when you're trying to use your saw blade. So do that next, then put the claws on, simply because when the claws are on, they get in the way when you're trying to use your saw blade. Be very careful not to hit any of your delicate work on the other side. The way I kind of play it safe is I always have the blade angled back, so it's cutting this way and the blade's going away from anything on the other side. But just always keep it in mind what the saw blade might be hitting the other side, and leave this bar going through it right until the last minute. I mean, I might as well just leave it in there until all the claws are on. It's like a little safety bar. All right, I've chopped it out. I may open up these holes a lot more. These are very rough, the side ones, but I wanted to start them off just so there's a little bit of work left to do when the claws are on. I can't really decide how much to open them. That looks a bit thick around there, but I don't know. I'll think about it as I proceed. Next step, I'm going to put these side claws on. All my claws, the usual rule, going down to the center. Imagine a center point of the ring, so they'll be going down to that angle. If you follow that rule, all the claws should be all symmetrical and nice. Thought about explaining what I'm doing. Flattened it with the file. Then I cut into it with a cylinder phrase. The cylinder phrase was the same gauge as my wire, which is about 1.1. Then I used a ball phrase to just mark down into it a little bit. Then I've got a drill, same gauge as the wire, so I'm just going to drill down. I did actually drill it with a thinner drill, just because I don't want to risk slipping off, because it goes to a point at the top of the shank. So I'm just opening up that drill hole now, considering going straight down to the center of the ring, get that angle right. So that's drilling down the top of the shank, and it's hitting the side of that collet as well. I ain't got to do a lot. So now that claw has got something to bite into. If you just solder it on the top, it's not really strong. It's better to have it going in the shank a little bit at least. What I do is I flatten the end of the claw. That drill hole, the bottom of the hole, doesn't just go flat, it goes to a point, obviously, because there's a bit of a tapered point on the drill, so the bottom of that hole has that shape. So I sharpen the claw a little bit, and it fills the space nicely when it goes in that hole. So there's less of a gap in there, means the solder is going to be much stronger. If I just put that flat-ended claw in, the solder has to fill that gap up. You get away with it, but it's not ideal. So I just sharpen it a little bit, just rotate it in my fingers. You should put it in a pin vise to really do it really well. Yeah. This is 2 days work now. I've done a half day, I did a full day yesterday, and then today another half day. Got this far. Next step, I'm putting the claws on, or should I do the small ones? I'll put the big ones on first. Yeah, if you see my other videos doing claws on a collet, same rules apply. Work it down to the center of the ring, and all the claws go down towards that. So I'm going to do these 4 on, because they can be soldered on nice and securely at 2 points. This is a struggle doing this kind of job in silver, because the whole, silver conducts heat. So you've got to get the whole thing hot enough for the solder to flood, and it's really risky putting these on when you've got claws like that just soldered in one position. So I'm going to have to work very, very carefully, because it's actually difficult to finish this in silver. So that's why I want to do these first, because they're held in 2 positions, and then I'm going to do 2 little claws there and there. Hopefully I can get it all done without any problems. Yep, so what I'll do is I will use a cylinder phrase about the same gauge as that, put it in there, so there's a nice little comfortable seat for this claw to go in, and I'll just hold it in with tweezers and solder it top and bottom. Cut a little scoop out down there, making sure my snipped little tapered edge goes past the bottom of my collet, so when I file it back it doesn't cause me a problem. Pair of tweezers. It's being held in position now. This is so sketchy. It's just being silver. When it gets hot, it just turns to butter, so I can't. I'm just gonna have to go for it, I think. Maybe I can hold it from the bottom and get that one to touch first. Might be safer. When I've got money to do it, I'll start doing my videos in platinum, I think. It'll just make life so much easier. Probably work much faster as well. Okay, I feel, oh, did that move? Yeah, it did. Okay, I'm gonna make that work somehow. I can solder there much easier. Alright, wish me luck. Let's put it in my slot. Newsflash. Yeah, as I suspected, I had a bit of trouble. You can see that join there, it lifted up. Had that connected there. I think this solder join flood, maybe I was squeezing it, the tension on it or something. So that solder came out. So it's ballsed up a little bit. I'm gonna have to pull this claw off, close that down again, and then put the new claw on there, and then try again with this one. I'm not gonna be able to, it's too risky. I can't hold the claws in position like I normally would make a piece of jewellery. I can't hold it with tweezers because it puts tension on it. And as soon as you get it hot, solder joins start flooding and it's just going to fall apart. So it's getting tricky now in silver, in gold or whatever. I would have no troubles whatsoever. I can find a way. But I'm calling it a day. It's like the end of the day now, so I'm getting tired. So mistakes are going to happen. Yeah, see you tomorrow. Okay, next day. Still feeling a bit down about this. This is really annoying. You can see that's lifted up there. There's even a risk to me heating it up and pulling that claw off because it could come unattached from there. This is a bit of a problem. But I just need to snap out of blaming the silver, blaming the hot room, blaming my blowtorch. Just be positive and think about how I'm going to do it. What I may do is, to make pulling that off under heat safer, I'm just going to flood a bit more solder there, and there. Looks like its solder's dried out. That gives that a bit more stability, and I should be able to just pull that gently away without any trouble. And then I've just got to simply hold that down. Or no, I'm not holding it anyway anymore after that. I'm going to push that down, hopefully I can get it to stay in position, and then make sure that's nicely soldered. And then have another go at putting a claw on. Tell you what I need medium solder. This is just hard solder. I put these 3 pieces together. Everything else is easy, so it would have been nice if I could have done everything up to this point in medium, and then used easy solder for putting the claws on. That would have been nice. Alright, let's get this done. Make sure I'm comfortable. Slow that down a bit. I decided a long time ago for this channel, the priority is authenticity. So I knew one day I'll be making something and a little mistake would happen, and I told myself if that happens in the future, I've got to show it in the video. So I can very easily edit all this out and make myself look good, but it's not a real, making things start to finish with no problems is not a real experience. There we go. Easy does it, as they say. Good news, it was just 10 minutes work to get that claw sorted. So I've lost that time plus the time I spent putting on that side claw and then ballsing it up and having to pull that off. But it's repaired alright. I put too much solder on, but I clean that off. I learned the hard way. I can't hold it with tweezers like I normally do, putting those claws on. So I'm going to make a kind of V, cut a scoop out of the cylinder frays for both claws on one side, and make a kind of V and just have it, hopefully I can make this work, have it laying down on top of that V claw, and I should be able to tack them on both at the same time. So what I'm doing here is cutting a groove on the left side and the right side of that center collet, just with the cylinder frays. Then hopefully, I think I've got enough wire. Where's my bit of wire gone? I can bend up a kind of V that just sits there, goes dong dong like that. I put it down flat on there, have that on top, space it out so it just sits on it, and then I can at least, as long as I've got that angle right, I can at least sort of tack it in position on that top claw. And that way, I can get these claws soldered on at the right angles without having to put any kind of weight on it or any pressure on it, because it's a delicate thing, all held together with easy solder, so becoming a bit tricky to work on. Man, I'm probably gonna have to end up pulling down more wire to finish it because of this. Alright, used to be about that long. Bit annoying, never mind. About there. Quite nice, isn't it? Close up a little bit more. I guess a secondary quality you'll get if you practice jewellery is you're a good problem solver. Like you find ways to fix problems, or you're thinking of clever ways to make things. So working with your restrictions. I'm actually really liking this. So you got your V-claw sitting down. So that's 2 claws at a nice angle, mirroring each other, perfectly parallel. All I've got to do, as long as you cut these grooves nicely, all I've got to do is just slide that back till it fits in and look in there, so they look nice. Put something under the shank that's flat, so the ring stays nice and horizontal, and lifts it up just enough where, when you look on this side, they're nicely tucked into the groove. I think this is actually a really good technique to put claws on a ring. Let me do this next time. You've got to love these accidents. You stumble across when you're making stuff and trying out new things. So, ladies and gentlemen, what we've done is we've been creative and imaginative, trying to find a way to get myself out of trouble, or to get past a kind of a difficult part of making this ring. Being silver and all done in easy solder, it's a problem. I can't really hold on to it with tweezers like I normally do, but working with that restriction in mind, I've thought of doing it this way, which I think may be an easier, quicker, more accurate way of putting claws on the side of a collet anyway. Square collet at least, or anything with a flat side on the end. Yeah, I like it. I think this is gonna work really well, and it's something I'll keep in mind and may try again in the future. There you go. I had to be careful lining it up, making sure that V was like going really central, but it's worked all right. I think it's quite a good little trick. So I've tacked on one side, so I'm just going to do the other one. Then I'll put it in the acid and have another proper look at it. And I'll tell you what, these little discs stink when you get them hot. Don't use these like I'm doing for any kind of height support. I'll find something else for the next solder. So I'm going to look round it, quite like it. It's all straight and nice, and because that's soldered on there and there, I reckon I can just put it down like that on the block and get away with soldering that one and then that one without having to hold anything in position. Oh, flooded in there, they went on the claw a little bit, I hate that. Still, safe, it worked. Right, so I had to touch up a few solder joins, wanted them to flood through really properly. I've got to make a second V-claw. Maybe I should have done 2 of these. Oh no, I didn't have the metal, did I? I've just been pulling down wire so I can do that again. First of all, I'm just going to get these claws the same, and then I can use it as a guide. When I'm cutting the grooves on there, I can keep trying it on my claw. So I definitely, when it's fitted, it's definitely the same as this side. So I'm just opening up these now with a slightly wider cylinder phrase, which is more similar to the wire I'm putting on. Pull the top in a little bit more, this one. Okay. Let's have a general look, seeing how symmetrical they are. Okay, it feels like I'm cheating, because I've never done like this before. It's quite funny seeing two go on there at the same time. Oh, this is brilliant, look at that. Just two held in there at the same time. I phrased that one in too far this way, and this one is not that far. Not towards the centre enough. Yeah, right, this one's got to come in a little bit. That's a bit better. It's a minute little adjustment. It's made the claws line up much better, and it just looks nicer as well. It looks more in the middle. I've tacked it on just one side there. Just want to check the accuracies of my claw. So looking at this edge and the edge behind it, tilt it away from me until they are level, and I know the ring is directly pointing towards the camera lens in this case, and then keeping it there, rotate it left and right, and the claws on the back should be perfectly in line with those and sort of disappear behind each other at exactly the same time, both sides. So it's not perfect, but it's pretty close. I just want to get this finished somehow, this ring. And don't forget, I've still got to put two claws on there and there, so that might be interesting. Maybe I should have done that first before these big ones. Okay, so I cut those bottom V's off and decided to in the end, feeling a bit brave again. Going around it, checking all my solder joins, filing up bits and getting rid of all the excess bits of solder, because I was a bit messy with my soldering. I was just dying, just kind of in a state of minor panic just to get the claws on and make progress with the ring after my little setback on the end there. Got to cut those binks out. I've got to tidy up the back holes on the sides. I mean, open up that middle one a little bit as well. I've got to get these 4 claws on at the back of these pear shapes, which I'm a bit nervous about, but I'm gonna think about that while I clean it up. Alright, putting these final claws on, what I'm doing is like a little U shape. I've got a cylinder phrase, I'm just gonna touch it in there and there, try and do it neatly and accurately, but I'm just gonna do it by eye. I'm not really measuring it out super accurately, but I'll do a good job just doing it by hand and eye. Yeah, I'm going to cut the little slots for them with a cylinder phrase. They are just going to go in that top section, top bezel, and then bend this into a U. Hopefully I can get it just under its own tension, just to sit in there, both sides. 2 little spots of solder, left and right, and then just cut out the middle section, leave me with 2 little claws sticking up. These are my little U shapes. So I'm just going to flatten the ends of these. Getting deliciously close to finishing this ring. So that's holding on there now. Let's push it down a little bit more. And there we go. Looks nice and neat. I've flattened the sides already, so it sits nice and neat against there. Claws are reasonably straight, not perfect, but they're perfectly fine for soldering in that position. I'll just tweak them back ever so slightly if I need to. Yep, there you go. Do that both sides, solder it in, clean it all up, job's done. Alright, I'm busy. Put these U-shapes on. Just snipping them off now. what I did, I flattened them. I was careful how they slotted on, not to go too far over the edge, and that saves me any tricky cleaning up inside. Sure needs a bit. Okay, so it's complete, just needs a lot of work cleaning it up. I've got to cut that pip out. So let's do a bit of cleaning up. And this bottom of this shank, I might go in a little bit towards that bottom bezel or that collet. I don't really want this little step there. I threaded the saw blade through, but I was chopping away, but I was nervous about damaging it the other side, so I'm going to phase it out. It's a little bit safer. Cleaning out the excess little bits of metal, because I just phrased out that centre bit, that little pip. I've got these really small needle files which are totally worn out. I need to get new ones, like I keep saying about all my files. You can thread a saw blade through, but it tend to be a bit tricky, especially on the bottom one where it's curved that way. And also you run a risk of just slipping off and then nicking the side of your claw. So I think it's much safer to use needle files where possible with this little section. This file, I was getting nowhere fast with that one, so I've got a much bigger file, much more coarse teeth, just using the point. I did actually grind the top of this down to give me more space doing jobs like this. It's useful. They make them too chunky for some reason. Another idea for my tool collection. Also, the name Bilton has a nice ring to it for high quality tools. I'm bringing out my own range of Bilton tools. Gonna have very thin, very flat, super hard metal so they don't wear out needle files. They're gonna be expensive, but worth the money. Sometimes people confuse expensive with bad value. Something can have a very high price, but it be extremely good value. If you did put a pip in yours, don't forget this is rounded, so don't just file it flat. You gotta think about putting that curve on a little bit. So I'm just rocking my needle file. I'm back on this one because I've got rid of the main majority of that lump. But that pip was just me sorting out my problem, because working in silver with too much easy soldering going on through making the ring. This was platinum, and you had to put that pip in. You'd be ruining your polish on the inside doing this. You could get a bit of paper in there and then use your polishing string to get it all buffed up again. But I think in platinum you wouldn't have needed to put that pip in there at all. So now I'm just gonna go over it with my slightly smoother needle files, just making sure, get rid of all the burrs around the edges, get all the claws matching heights, got to shorten these, get all the tops all nice and flat, be buffing over it that way, clean up all the solder joins. I will be using my rubber discs to get all the solder lines perfectly sharp. I won't bother polishing it because it's silver and it will just end up rounding off all my nice sharp edges, so I'm just going to ruin it. I'm going to take in that a little bit, get that nice rounded edge just going into that bottom bezel, under bezel, tidying up this claw, solder all over it. Yeah, just a bit of work to do, but all just obviously neating up the shank, get that all properly finished. So just the whole thing is all papered up and all nice and clean. So I won't bother showing you that on video. I'm just going to crack on with it and get this job finished. Okay. Another scorching hot day. Right, we got to the end of the ring. We finished it. I'm really pleased with how it turned out. I do actually really like this ring. It was more of a struggle than I thought getting to the end and getting it finished nicely. It's my fault really for not having medium solder. I think if I just joined the three parts together like the top plates where the stones sit in, if I just joined them with hard solder, done everything else with medium solder, and then just doing the claws with easy, it would have been fine. But just having the majority of it all done on easy solder, it was causing me problems when I was getting to the end of it. So what was kind of cool was, I'm quite happy it happened in a way, because I think it's good to show you things don't always go to plan, and then you have to think of a new route to get the job done. And it was quite cool that I come up with that V-claw technique. It worked really well, putting it flat, and like I think I mentioned before, I'm tempted just to make another collet just to try out that claw technique again on a kind of largish four-cornered thing, like square or rectangle, whatever. I think it's going to work really well in the future, so I want to try that again. But looking over the ring, yes, I haven't made too much effort cleaning it up. If this was a proper piece for a customer, I'd spend a lot of time getting everything really perfect. All these little edges really perfect, every claw nicely buffed back, like every solder joint cleaned up. Around here is a bit messy. And then the more work you do before polishing, but basically I don't like polishing, so I found that the more work you do getting it really accurate and all the surfaces really smooth at this stage means there's less work to do on the polishing motor, and you'll do a better polish as well. Like, the less severe of a polish you got to give it, the more likely you are to end up with a nicer finish, and all your corners will remain sharp. If you had a big scratch on the side, you're trying to polish it out, you're just kind of wearing out the ring to get a nice finish on it. So yeah, I recommend doing as much work as you can tolerate at this stage, and then there's less work to do on the polishing motor. But looking at it from the side, like, the gaps are always really unforgiving of any inaccuracies. Mine come out quite well. Claw angles, they kind of mirror it in. This one, I don't really think they're going quite to the centre. It's not bad. But yeah, they look all right. I know these are not great, but I was just dying to get them on there. But that little U-shaped trick worked quite well. I didn't actually have as much trouble as I thought I was going to have putting these little side ones on. They come out all right. Maybe it'd look a bit nicer if they're just a bit more in, maybe a bit closer to sort of sitting under that stone. Anyway, but yeah, it's all right. Again, didn't put too much effort into these as well. Maybe it would look nicer if that wall was thinner. Could take these holes a bit bigger. Shank, I don't mind it. I don't mind. I don't have a problem with it at all. But maybe I would thin it off slightly there and there, just so it's a bit more coming down, a bit of a sharper angle. I'm just keeping it the same thickness further up, basically, and then from about there going taller. But I don't mind it as it is. Looking down on it, it's all pretty straight. So anyway, that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope there was some useful information in it. Like I say, I'm quite pleased that I had a bit of a problem with it and then overcome that problem and ended up with a finished good quality ring, because that's all part of the experience. There's no way, no one ever makes all the jewellery they've ever made works perfectly start to finish. And if there's any other instructional jewellery making videos and they make out that they do everything perfectly, they're doing a lot of editing tricks, because things don't always go to plan. So I quite like the fact that I could feature some of my troubles in the video. So I feel like it's a more authentic, real jewellery making experience you witnessed on the video. But that's it. Yeah, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, share, hit that bell, and then see you next time.